Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. I'm going to say good morning to Big Boss Eco City over on Instagram, to Gary Muirhead and to Dan Cullen, who are, I think, yes, they're both on YouTube. Good morning, gents. How are you doing? Question from Gary to Dan: are you still down a hole, Dan? I don't think he's down anywhere at the moment. It's chucking it down with rain, I think, in Plymouth. Top of the morning from a very rainy Plymouth. Plymouth is one of those places. I think when you get down to that part of the country, you get two types of weather. It's either good or awful. I don't think there's actually any grey. I think it's terribly awful. How are we all doing today? I've got to admit, feel like I'm running on empty right now. I got up this morning. You'd think muscle memory would take care of this kind of thing. I get up every morning, put the kettle on, make myself a cup of coffee, make the missus a cup of coffee, take her coffee out. Same thing every single day. Got up this morning, went to the kettle, and then stood there thinking, what do I do here again? Completely out of it. Completely out of it. Andy Darvell says, morning, 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 everyone. Proper windy here in Nine Elms. Still not putting piles in as Network Rail weren't happy with the Rams. Yeah. I feel your pain, and I don't suppose the weather's helping. I mean, I don't know what it's like at Nine Elms, but it's absolutely blowing a gale here. And Mark Whiting is here, which means obviously we have permission to begin, and we were going to do that right away because I do want to have a bit of a chat about the news. What broke last night? So, tell you what, let me roll the intro, and then we'll get onto the news. I'll get to all of that in just a moment. Just to address the two bits here. Andy Darvell says, not hit wind off speed yet, but close to it. I would imagine gust-wise it must be getting close. And Gary says, Captain Birdseye jumper today. Yes, Captain Birdseye jumper. There is a story here. I don't make this publicly known, but I'm a bit of a fan of the shop Zara. Bit of a fan of the shop Zara. My style icon is probably Pep Guardiola, the manager of Manchester City. I think he dresses very well. I don't suppose for one moment he's ever set foot in a branch of Zara, but their clothes are very similar. I've had this for a good couple of years, but while I had the beard, I didn't really wear it because beard would tend to stick to it. So by the end of the day, you'd end up with like fluff. Don't have the beard at the moment. Jumper's back. So yeah, Ken Hatter has got so much weather he can barely fit it on the page. Yep, and there we are. Dan saying coverage is bad. And I spoke too soon, apparently. There we go. Wind off. Such is the lot of the crane operator, and our man Jim has just arrived as well. Good morning to you. Concrete Constructions over on Instagram just pitched up as well. There's a bunch of other people as well, but Instagram's weird. People tend to have weird names over there, and unless I can read it and make sense of it, I don't tend to welcome them. But Concrete Construction, I can see that very, very easily. It is Tuesday. You know that, but it's Tuesday, the 9th of December. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, we're going to be zooming in on Caterpillar's new 322 excavator. Manitou telehandlers go electric. We've got a hot Hitachi in the cold of Alaska, and Komatsu's PC 365 excavator performs. Plus, in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, in the world of demolition, dishonesty pays. Yes, that's what we're going to be getting to a bit later on. But first, we are actually going to have a little bit of news today. So here we go. So early evening last night, I received news that the Plantworks exhibition had been sold. Here is what the statement actually said, and I've got it on my screen here somewhere when I can find it. There we go. The Construction Equipment Association today announced that Plantworks, the UK's largest working, keep that word in mind, working construction equipment show, has been acquired by 19 Group. Plantworks has always been a hands-on event built around real machines, real demonstrations, and a loyal community of manufacturers, contractors, and plant hirers. Since the first show in 2013, it has been shaped by the CEA, its members, and an incredible team who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to deliver an event the industry can be genuinely proud of. The final CEA run edition took place in Newark in September 2025. I know a few of you were there. The next Plantworks will be held at Birmingham's NEC on the 22nd to the 24th of June, and it will be led by new event director Nick Davison. It goes on after that. I'm sure if you want to read it, you can find that statement somewhere online. I have a take on it. First thing is this. The statement refers to Plantworks as a working show. Now, personally, I think that's stretching things a bit. The actual demonstration of plant and equipment has always been a bit limited at Plantworks by location, by weather, health and safety rules and regulations. But they tried. They did try. But with the move to the NEC, any notion of it being a working show, I think, just died. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. To the best of my recollection, there has never, excuse me, there has never been a successful plant and equipment show at the NEC. The place is just a soulless warehouse, and there's nowhere to actually demonstrate kit. I've actually been I've been to shows where companies have tried to mime in the outside area, and it doesn't work. It does not work. My second point is this: Plantworks, I think, was originally welcomed by the industry as a long overdue replacement for SED. To my mind, it never really fulfilled that role. But I think a lot of us were willing to give it time and give it support, partly because the industry actually deserves a working show, and also I think because a lot of us had pretty warm feelings to the likes of Rob Oliver, the then CEO of the CEA, Lou Carney, who was the public face and everything else. I think as a result of all of that, we tended to stick with it when the weather gods conspired against it, where we stuck with it when it changed venues. But for me personally, that honeymoon period had been over for quite some time, to the point where I didn't even bother to attend the last show a few months ago. I kind of felt like it has run its course, so I chose to stay away. I know some people did attend and did their best to enthuse about it. And listen, I'm sure business was done, and I'm sure people had a good time and everything else. But I genuinely, I was watching from afar, and I had no regrets about missing out at all. Um, I I think when you've done Bauma and ConExpo and Intermat and Samota, these other major shows, it always feels like a big step down to go to Plantworks. And I know not everybody can afford to go to ConExpo and Bauma. I know not everybody is paid to attend these things, but as I say, I had no regrets about missing out on Plantworks the last time around. And I'll tell you now, you can mark this in your diary. You can clip this if you wish, and you can replay it in to bring me down at some point in the future. I'll tell you now, when June 2027 rolls around, I will not be at the NEC for Plantworks. There is no way. Wild horses would not get me to the NEC. Partly because I have reservations about the show, partly because I have massive reservations about the NEC, but mostly because I think the show just kissed goodbye to its affinity to the industry. I don't know 19 Group. I'm sure they're very good at whatever it is they do. But this is an industry that you can't dabble in. You're either in and of the plant game, or you're not. We've had the rise, and there are magazines out there who purport to be part of the industry. They're not. We all know they're not. We can see they're not. They've got no affinity with this sector whatsoever. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have exactly the same with 19 Group. Listen, for those exhibitors and visitors that choose to stick with it, I wish them well. I wish them nothing but success. But I can't help thinking that the new owners will be taking a largely dead horse and turning it into a white elephant. I'm gonna go over to, very quickly over to Instagram, where Garvin, Mostly Diggers, just said, "Is there outside plots at the NEC?" In a manner of speaking, there are. There's space between the holes. And I know from waste shows and that kind of thing, there have been attempts to, as I say, mine machines. You have an excavator just, I mean, it doesn't touch terra firma, it doesn't dig anything, it's just doing a bit. Well, who needs to see that? Who needs to see that? The NEC is phenomenally expensive to exhibit at, so I think that could have a negative effect. I think actually getting hotel rooms, if you're choosing to stay there, that's expensive as well. I think one of the advantages of plant work being tucked away out in the out in the boondocks was hotel rooms were a little bit cheaper. But I think that loss of affinity with the industry will be the killer. Um, Mostly Diggers. Oh, I think the NEC is where Llama happens. I went to it a couple of years back. Yeah, the Llama show does take place there. There's a bunch of shows. I know there was a. I'm trying to remember. I wish I could remember the specific details, but there was a show there. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even longer than that, where they were demonstrating a crusher and something jumped out of the crusher and hit a bystander, which I think further undermines any notion of it being a working show. But when you go to an Intermat, a Bauma, a Conexpo, there is machines moving. There's a real hands-on feel. Plant works because of the health and safety police, also because of some of the venues that they chose. You could never do that, and the old SED notion of turn up with your card, here's the keys, go and have a bit of a play on the machine. That's long gone. I think the UK has largely destroyed that. I'm going to head over to the chat because there's a lot being said over there that I've not been keeping up with. Let me go back to here. Gary says we're bracing ourselves for some high winds up here today, 60 to 70 miles an hour. I don't think we're anywhere near that, but it's pretty blowy. That's a good look with the cat cap. That one. Don't know. Gary Muirhead says, does that mean Lou is out of a job? Well, I don't know. I mean, Lou has a bunch of clients, of which the CEA was just one. I know she became very kind of public around about plant works time, the run up to and immediately after any plant works. And that was, I think a lot of people associate it's plant works, it's Lou. The two are interchangeable. I don't know. I mean, 19 Group might choose to, retain her services separately. They'd be sensible to do so because she knows the people, certainly within the press. She knows the people, the influencers, the press, and everything else, the media. She knows them better than pretty much anyone. I hope they have the good sense to retain that. But I think when you take out, as I say, I mean, the person that sort of drove the return of plant works as a replacement for SED was Rob Oliver. Rob Oliver has been gone a few years, and here we are selling it on. And as Ken Hatcher has said, there you are. That's the end of plant works. You can't dig at the NEC. No, you can't. You can't. Jim says, not sure I'll be bothering if it's the NEC. I like outdoor shows. Yeah. This is an outdoor industry to the point. I will go to Bauma. Well, perhaps more specifically, I will go to Conexpo. Conexpo is whatever it is, 6 months away now. And I will go there. There are huge, vast halls full of equipment. But I think if you were to actually look, if you could do a heat map like they do in football of where I spend my time, I reckon I'm outdoors for about 85% of my time. I'm indoors for about 15%. And some of that 15% is getting from one outdoor area to another or grabbing myself a burger. The absolute truth is, as Jim has rightly said, it is an outdoor occupation. As soon as you put it indoors, killed it stone dead. Hillhead is the only working show in the UK. Yeah, it is. Although even Hillhead, I have to say, I mean, Jim has said exactly the same here. That's my feeling as well. The way that I know we're going off at a tangent here, but the way that Hillhead used to work was you had Caterpillar and Finning at the far end. You'd sort of come in down the whole road, do a right and go to the end, and you'd have Finning and Caterpillar, and then you'd have people like Hitachi and Doosan and all of the other Liebherr as well. And the way that it would work was that Caterpillar would do a demonstration. Let's say at like 10 o'clock in the morning, Caterpillar would do a demonstration for about 15 minutes. They'd stop, and then Liebherr would start theirs at 10:15. They'd stop at 10:30, at which point Hitachi would take over, and they'd stop at 10:45, at which point Lugong would take over, or whoever. That's not the case anymore, to the point where on the last couple of outings of Hillhead, Caterpillar has turned up with virtually no equipment. It's been all about services and that kind of thing. Mostly diggers. Garvin says, actually, a downside for me, at the least, to some of the UK shows is that they're midweek only. The two Irish shows are both on a Friday and Saturday. Easy for anyone to go. Yeah, that's another point. But then again, I mean, I've not been to an Irish show for a good few years, I have to say. But I know that the Irish shows were always that bit more family friendly. Husband, wife, couple of kids would pitch up, shoving push chairs about the place, and it would be a real family outing. We don't have that. We don't have that. We're so fixated on health and safety. And I don't want to go off the beam here, but I will go to ConExpo and I will see babies in arms, babies in pushchairs. I will see toddlers roaming about the place. I'll have the same at Balmer. I'll have the same at Intermat. Perhaps even more specifically at Samota. Samota, people arrive as families. It's the Italian way, I guess. They arrive as families. And yet here, and I do think we need to take a long, hard look at this if we are to actually retain any kind of decent exhibition support. Children are allowed for 2 hours on that afternoon. They must be accompanied by somebody who's been CRB checked, and they've got all the children are wearing ill-fitting but sponsored high-vis jackets. Oh, bullshit, guys. It's just not the way. And I do wonder if we have backed ourselves into a corner. And I also wonder if this is one of my COVID predictions coming true. One of the things that I think Plantworks has suffered from is the fact that it has failed to retain the constant support of the big hitters. You would think, perhaps, given the fact that it's a UK show, that JCB would be they'd be a fixed part. They'd be part of the furniture. It's Plantworks, JCB are there, and Thwaites are there, and so on down the line. They've never achieved that, and I think part of that was the COVID experience. Some of the manufacturers, and I would single out JCB and Volvo among them, is that they became very, very, very adept at hosting their own events, either in person or online, to the point where, do I really want to pay tens of thousands of pounds, possibly hundreds of thousands of pounds, to exhibit, to transport all my people and all of my machines to a place in the middle of a field somewhere where I'll be, I'll have Caterpillar one side, Komatsu the other, Volvo in front of me, Hitachi behind me. Do I really want to do that? Or should I do something smaller but more focused where my message is not diluted? And I wonder if that has now come home to roost. Garvin just said, they wonder why it's hard to get the people into the industry. Many of those families have no exposure to it if it's not family friendly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And when you think about it, and I hate to criticise, and I'm sad. I am sad that Plantworks has gone the way it's gone. But when you think about how inspiring this industry could be, but I've seen when they they take the kids around and they're all in single file, and here's a digger, keep moving, children, stop speaking, don't, and it's just it's like taking them around the Natural History Museum, but giving them 20 seconds looking at the blue whale. That's not inspiring. It's just, oh, there's a thing there. Oh, there's another thing there. Who cares? Frank at Darncod Demo says in Western Australia, we don't have enough. We have the largest iron ore sector in the world, absolute massive resource sector, but still nothing like the expos around the world. You'd have thought there would be. Why isn't there a Balmer Australia? There's a Balmer China, there's a Balmer Africa these days, I think, or Balmer Middle East or something like that. Why don't they have a Balmer Australia? There's certainly, and the kit that goes down there, you'd have thought that would have been absolutely right. Andy Thornton, morning, nearly made it on time. Yeah, listen, we're not keeping track here. I'm just going to put a cross against your name. The 19 group, who? I don't know. Apparently, Fred told me they're based in Wimbledon, which is not a million miles away from me, but I don't know. Dan is on his way out the door. I have to give up. The coverage here is diabolical. I think the weather is partly to blame. Chris Ford is here. Morning, fellas. Is it me or is the job going down like the Titan? It does feel like that, doesn't it? It does feel like that. Plant Works was a very good show at both Newark and Peterborough, but I can't see it being very good at the NEC. If anyone is listening from the organisation, why not hold it at Donington? I don't think. I don't think it's a venue thing. I don't think it's a venue thing. There we are. There we are. There's Lou. Morning, Lou. Mixed emotions for me today. She says, I don't think I'll be involved in this. They have their own team. Let's see. Well, listen, it's not for me to judge, and you know, it's for Lou to negotiate and everything else. Taking it from a working show to an indoor show is a terrible idea. I'll make no bones about it. I won't be attending. But if you're not going to retain somebody with the inside knowledge that Lou Carney has, you may as well reach for the nearest shotgun and shoot yourself in both feet. You really might. I mean, you know, I'm sure, you know, if they've bought it, maybe they've bought the database. I'm sure my name appears on the database. The first thing I hear from the 19 group, I'm just going to block it. Don't care. Not interested, fellas. Not interested. Hillhead be the big show now. Yeah, well, we'll have to make do, won't we? And I feel bad saying that. I feel bad saying that because I do think Hillhead is a very good show, and I've always looked forward to Hillhead. Although I have to say, the last two outings, less so. I like the place. Buxton's lovely as long as the weather plays kind. The people are good, but again, it's become a bit samey. And the thing that always attracted me to Hillhead and SED back in the day was here's some kit doing its thing, not here's a bit of kit parked in a field or a bit of kit parked in, you know, the bottom of a quarry somewhere. Do I really want to travel 400-mile round trip, spend a few £100 for a hotel to see something parked in a field? Not really. Not really. Donington, apparently, stone's throw from East Midlands Airport, surrounded by hotels, great rail and road links. As I say, I don't think it's. I mean, I think the location, the switch of location, to my mind, is a death knell anyway. That's my take on it. 19 group, if you'd like to prove me wrong, I wish you every success. I really do. But I don't see it. And I don't think the venue is entirely to blame. You know, if we didn't have, you know, the level of health and safety police influence, you know, if we could take ourselves off to a field somewhere, you know, and actually have digging and loading and crushing and all that kind of thing, even if the show was half the size, people would go. But to go and wander around a field where machines are static, and I also wonder about the influence of the shrinking world. Bear with me. Back in the day, I think SED had genuine value because it was the one opportunity per year for the industry to meet, for people to come along, kick the tires, kick the tracks, see machines operating, see new machines doing their thing, and everything else. I think with the ease with which we can travel now, you know, if I am if I'm the chief buyer of Flannery's or Lynch or Sunbelt or True 7, am I going to go to an SED, a Plantworks, or am I going to jump on a plane and go to Bauma, the biggest exhibition in the world, or ConExpo, the biggest in that hemisphere? I think those shows, not only are they much bigger, I think they're much more representative. You know, if Liebherr were an exhibitor at Plantworks, for example, they might bring along 5, 6. Let's be generous. Let's say they bring along a dozen machines. You go to see Liebherr at Bauma, you can see 300 machines. So why would you bother? That's my feelings on it. That's that. Today's look is very much the Duke from Layer Cake. Is the bright yellow Range Rover on order? It's not, but I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't want a Range Rover at all, to be perfectly honest. Ken Hatcher says they need to change the name now, the UK Construction Show. Yeah, because I mean, I've never really given it a great deal of consideration, but Ken's hit the nail on the head. Plant works. Change the name to Plant Stands, because it's not moving. The cost of exhilarating at these shows are getting prohibited. Someone I know has a stand at Hillhead. It's not large and cost is what's that? 12 grand? Is that 12 grand for the 3 days? I think that's 12 grand for the 3 days. That's a lot. Yeah, it is. And also, I think it's worth looking beyond. You think about exhibiting. You have to pay the organizer to be an exhibitor. 5,000, 10,000, 50,000. So you've got that. You've then got to move machines from where they were built or where they're currently residing to the show at enormous cost and requires a lot of planning. You then have to take a lot of your sales force off the road and put them in hotels and feed them and look after them and stroke their egos somewhere else. So that will cost a bloody fortune as well. I'm just not entirely convinced. I said it at the height of COVID. I reckon that the shows of the future will be hybrid, partly online or partly offline. But I also think that some of the shows are dead in the water. Garvis just said, sadly, I rarely find some intriguing new product to me or service at the shows. Everything is well flagged and well covered in the media ahead of the shows. Yeah, there's another thing that's changed, I think. Equipment manufacturers used to be very good at keeping their powder dry. And I know some of them really played the game. So the likes of JCB were very good at this. They would hold a press conference about 2 weeks before a plant works or what's the one up in Coventry? The higher one. It doesn't matter. They would hold a press conference, so the press would attend and they'd get first bite at this new product, and then they would make it appear, make its debut a few weeks later at the show, and they'd write about it again. The problem is now we all know this stuff. If you're not a complete enthusiast or you're not arriving checkbook in hand, why are you bothering? If you want to find out about the latest JCB excavator, we've got a new Caterpillar excavator coming up in just a few minutes. Go online. Do you really want to travel to Newark or the NEC? Jim says the whole industry is anti-kids, not just the shows. There's no wonder it's all slowly dying. I 100% agree. 100% agree. And I know it's something we've discussed before, and I am conscious of the fact we've been going half an hour and we've done fuck all. I apologise for that. But one of the other things that I find ludicrous about this is I've got 4 children. They're all old. They're all adults now. But when I was, when my children were younger, school age, I would send them to school. I would send them off on school trips. I'd send them off on football trips and hockey trips and dancing trips and everything else. All of which had carers and chaperones and teachers and assistants and everything else. But I'll tell you now, nobody had my children's health, safety, and well-being as close to the forefront of their brain as me. So if I am an adult, I'm wind the clock back 25 years when my children are young, and I am going to an exhibition. Trust me, they will not get in the way of a backhoe loader or an excavator or a dozer, because I will have them under lock and key. They will not leave my side. But the Brits are really good at this. Something tiny happens and everything has to change. You think back to the whole football hooliganism back in the 70s in the UK. People would a few people, few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people would turn up, get drunk, have a fight, and cause mayhem. So what do? We ban all alcohol at all football games forever. That's not the answer. Deal with the problem. Exactly. JCB now got their quarry. Fantastic setup they have now. Yeah, and I will go back to that dilution of message. If I mean, I've been to, obviously, JCB open days, and I know some of you guys have as well, but I mean, the Volvo one is a perfect example. The Volvo days up in Eskilstuna, not exactly local. It's a bit of a pain in the arse to get to. Fly to Stockholm, 2 hours in a car, bit of a pain in the arse. But once you've got there, you are drip-fed Volvo for 48 hours. You get nothing but Volvo. You get Volvo trucks and excavators and ADTs, and by the time you come away from Eskilstuna, you feel like you have been thoroughly Volvoed. If you go to an exhibition, an open exhibition, you might spend 15, 20, 30 minutes with Volvo, but by the time you've walked 100 yards, that's kind of gone out your head because you're now speaking to Hitachi or Caterpillar. Mick, good morning, Mick. I just went to just a little point. I went to a little plant and farming thing the other day. It was a family-orientated affair. Got to admit, it was the first time in my life I went to one of these things, but it was an enjoyable day. Strange people, these Italians. Everything is family, but nice all the same. Best thing about Italy, apart from the food. What I have to say, this has happened to me in Spain before now, but I've been to Italy a few times now. I went into a restaurant in Italy. Me and my other half went into a restaurant in Italy a few years ago, and there was a private party going on, but the restaurant was open. And once we got in there, it was like, oh, hang on a minute, all of the tables seemed to be dedicated over there. And I said to the waiter, are we okay? And he said, we're serving. And then one of the family came over and went, come and join us. So we did. That's the Italian way, whereas I think we would keep people at arm's length. Jim, Lou, get the backing and start a new show, just as Plantworks was, but with more working areas. See, I have to say, when I told Fred last night that I actually said, Fred, Plantworks has been sold. He said, some earth movers, because I think if anyone could make Plantworks what Plantworks should be, it would be Chris and the boys over at Awesome Earth Movers. But that's not what's happened. Dan says, morning, Lou, what a mess they're making of this. I feel it'll be on a downward spiral without you. Yeah, my feelings entirely. And listen, I mean, I've known Lou for forever. Lou, I won't share just how long you and I have known each other. But Lou, I mean, for those of you who don't know, before Lou did the job that she has been doing, her mum did it. Lou grew up when she was going to school with my wife. She grew up exposed to SED, to plant, to the manufacturers. Oh, fuck it. Lou's been involved in this industry for 35 odd years in various capacities. She knows everyone. Everyone knows her. and I don't even think, I mean, I think she is respected, but I don't even think respect is the point. For example, when Plantworks decided to host the exhibition Future Works, I'll be honest, I was skeptical. It had never been tried before, and unfortunately, it was never tried again. The whole thing took place in what I can only describe as a blizzard, but because Lou was involved, I went, yeah, go on then. You take that out, and no, I'm not booking my early seat on the train to the NEC. Let's put it like that. Gary Muirhead, sorry to hear that, Lou. Someone with your talent will be snapped up by someone who deserves your respect. Yeah, listen. You should invite the new show director on the show to see what the plans are. I don't care. I genuinely, I don't care. I'm just not bothered. Not bothered at all. A load of static machines doesn't sell much. Machines are about movement, speed, and power. Displaying that is what sells kit. Yeah, I mean, at the point that you're going to a field and you're just looking at a machine side on that's parked, look at it online. Look at it on YouTube. At least the fucking thing's moving, you know? I think, hang on a minute. Dan says, think these shows are focusing on knowledge influencers and videos should be focused on the man behind the levers talking to manufacturers. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that is down to the organizers. Ultimately, all of the manufacturers are a commercial operation. And let's make no bones about it. The main reason they're going to an exhibition is to hopefully make relationships that will ultimately sell machines. That's it. And maybe that has driven the shows in the direction they've gone. If you are the chief buyer at Flannery's, I don't know who that is, and maybe I'm being unkind, but if you're the chief buyer at Flannery's, you're probably making a lot of your decisions based on spec sheets and price lists and that kind of thing. The people that actually get to drive the machines, i.e. the operators, generally don't have a great deal of say in that. So the people that would want to get the feel and the comfort and the visibility and the sound and the smell and everything else, I'm not sure how much they matter at exhibitions. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I think the exhibitions are geared almost entirely now to let's butter up the buyers. And if a few digger drivers turn up, well, we'll give them a baseball cap and send on their way. That's my feeling. I thought plants were still life. Yes, well done. Jim says no problem, but sadly it was too short notice and we couldn't get anyone to man the stand. I'd have thought Hillhead would have jumped at having a load of old kit working in its own area. The old kit brings extra people in, and those people may just buy some new kit whilst they're there. Again, I just think there's a big disconnect. I think there's a big disconnect between those that do, i.e. you guys, and those that talk about it. Looking at my side of the business, I'll turn up here every day and talk about plant until I go blue in the face, sometimes more quickly than others. There are magazines in existence who would take a bunch of press releases, throw it out and say, oh, look, we produced a magazine. We are of the plant industry. I'm here to tell you, fellas, you're fucking not. You're not. And you're not serving the industry. You're not serving people. You are just serving yourself and getting advertising off the back of it. And I am fearful. I think the origins of Plantworks, and Lou, if I'm putting words into Rob Oliver's mouth that were never there, please let me know. When Plantworks first happened back in, was it 2013 or thereabouts? Those of us that had attended an SED, it was like, oh, thank God. Thank God somebody of the industry has said, "We need this. We've been lacking it. We need this." And I think that was why, from a standing start, Plant Works was relatively successful. And even though, on a couple of occasions the weather largely wrote the show off, I think the fact that they were coming from the same place as us, as an industry, as the people of the industry needs this. We need to get together and see equipment that's moving and really get the camaraderie and the feel of the industry back front and center. I think that's why Plant Works did what it did. I think latterly, and I hate to say it, I think latterly it's the show has kind of morphed a bit. And I think some of that original drive and just sheer enthusiasm for the industry has kind of waned a bit. Um, as I say, I'm just speaking personally. I mean, like I say, I was very aware of when Plant Works was. And from the moment that I knew the dates, I just thought, no, I won't be going. There was nothing that apart from hanging out with Lou and Peter Haddock and Nick Drew and people like that, there was nothing that really would have put me in my car and made me drive 150 miles up the road. Just not that asked. Lou says, "Thank you for your support." Lou, I mean, fair play for saying thank you. I don't think thanks are even necessary. I think if 19 Group are ever get to watch this, there's one of the jewels in your crown there. That's, one of the reasons that, people had a warm feeling towards Plant Works was the lady on the screen there. Simple as that. Mick says, "I know people from a lot of companies visit firms to push their products, and I'm surprised the amount of people who have either phoned me or made visits to my place here, not pushing their wares, just letting me know that they're there if I need it. And the wines I've been given, God Almighty, most I've never heard of, but not just as a bribe, as a gift." If ever you get an opportunity, and Mick, you may well have read it. There's I'll look it up in a moment. There's a book called Parrot in the Pepper Tree. It was by a guy who was originally in the original lineup of the band Genesis, who decided to jack it all in and take himself off, and he bought some land and a farmhouse in Spain. And a lot of the book is, he struggles, making the thing work, but a lot of it is down to people, the local people, taking him into their hearts and their houses and really helping him out. I honestly, it's one of my favorite books. Parrot in the Pepper Tree. Give it a look. In my opinion, for what it's worth, is the show kept moving around. There was no consistency, so we didn't have the loyalty that Hillhead has. I don't think that helped. No, I don't think that helped. But I think if the show, and I almost feel bad. I didn't have a problem with Plant Works. I just kind of thought it had kicked off, and so the first 2 or 3 outings I thought was about as good as Plant Works got personally. Just my personal opinion, and my personal opinion is worth absolutely sod all, as you will know. But I do think, it is that if you build it, they will come. I think if Plant Works had been what we all hoped it would be and what it always looked like it might be, I'm not sure the venue would have been quite so important. I mean, you don't want to be holding it in the middle of Cornwall, miles from anywhere. Of course you wouldn't. But I do think if the show had been everything that we'd all hoped it would be, I think the venue would have been less of a concern. Jim, we've been going for 45 minutes and I've done no show yet. I asked Hillhead if the Vintage Caterpillar Club could have a stand at the show. Said no, not enough room. I asked Lou for Plant Works. She said yes, but sadly couldn't get anyone to man the stand. That makes sense now. I did see the thing about Manning instead. Mixes, Mark. Not sure if you're aware. Over here, a lot of the farms are small affairs, but they're like a collective. If a new machine is needed, everyone gets involved and it's shared between them. Everyone helps to pay for it and its upkeep, and it works. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't aware of that specifically. One of the best nights out I've ever had, and I promise I will start the show in just a moment. One of the best nights I've ever had, I went to Bilbao in Spain. I was working with Caterpillar at the time, and one of the Caterpillar dealers' representatives spoke very good English, and he was given the job of driving me from place to place and, introducing me to customers and stuff like that. And one evening he said, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Going back to the hotel, bite to eat, and then I'll be ready for tomorrow morning." He said, "Oh, come with me." And we went for a night in basically a flat, an apartment. No pool, no jacuzzi, nothing like that. And basically a bunch of blokes, and they were all blokes, had got together, and together they had bought the flat, and once a week they would meet at the flat, play cards, have a beer or six, watch the football, whatever it might be. And the way that it worked was one of the guys owned not a supermarket, but a kind of a mini supermarket. So he'd arrive armed with bottles of wine. One of the guys was a baker. He would arrive with baskets of bread. One of the guys was a butcher. He would arrive, not surprisingly, with baskets of meat. And they would all literally, I mean, to be honest, most of the evening took place in the kitchen with just people, cooking this, frying that, cutting this up. And we just stood there, chewed the fat, quite literally on occasions. And what a night that was. And as I say, the whole thing was, as our friend Mick has described it, it was a collective. They bought the flat together, they all contributed to it. And once a week, they'd all get together and blow off a bit of steam. Huge fan. 48 minutes in, I'm going to start the show. We'll be sticking with Caterpillar in just a moment. But first of all, Chris Ford says, I only ever went to one plant works, not because I was disappointed in it, but I could never get the time to go. Go to others at work always seemed to clash. I missed Hillhead this time as well for the first time. It's not ideal. I remember when I used to do the PR for the Caterpillar dealer for the south of England, Leverton, back in the day. They used to have open days on a fairly regular basis at their facility in Windsor was one. I think they used to do one up in Spalding in Lincolnshire as well. They used to do these regular open days, and they were moderately successful until somebody, 19 Group, take note, somebody said, why don't we do them on a Saturday and we'll hire a couple of clowns, a bouncy castle, a burger van, somebody selling candy floss, so the kids can come along as well. And they went from 50, 60, 70 people attending to 500 people attending, just because they could take the kids. 19 Group, take note. If I ever get the room, I'm starting my own plant show, done the way I think it should be. Put me down for a ticket, would you, Jim? Does this mean that my plant works duck may be a collector's item one day? Gary, I think it just went up in value. I think it really did. The fact that you probably shared a bath with it may have devalued it a little bit, but that's a whole. Don't tell anyone. That would be my idea. Right. Okay. I promised you Caterpillar. The new Cat 322 looks like this. Looks pretty good to me. What do you make of that? I'm going to go over to the chat. Let's have a look. Chris Ford, Gary, I think your plant looks duck is a dead duck. I think it will be. Did you know, says Dan Cullen, the UK has the second biggest tungsten seam in the world. In the world. I didn't know that. I don't, and I can't think of any reason why I would want to know that. But apparently China has the biggest and we have the second. Who knew? And apparently, Jim buttering me up as he often does. You won't need a ticket. You'll be there as part of the Breakfast Show Roadshow, working your magic. Yes. Oh yeah, this is definitely magic, isn't it? Manitou going electric. Let's talk about it.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Now, Manitou have released a bunch of videos. I think there's 3, possibly even 4, on the fact that they've electrified some of their telescopic handlers. I've taken this one's a minute long. Some of them are like 5 and 6 minutes long. If you want to find out more about the Manitou telehandlers that have gone electric, go over to their YouTube channel. It's very good. Lots of French accents, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But I've taken the one that kind of gives you a hint, and it looks like this. Yeah, sacre bleu and mon Dieu. Bit of electrification from Manitou. Dan Cullen is on the same wavelength as our man Gary. My plant work bags and hats and duck be stable collector's items. They may well be. I tell you what, it might be worth actually having a look on eBay. I wonder if there'll be a sudden influx of ducks. I wonder. I've heard of Stranger Things. There, Gary and his new cat. Enjoying your new toy, Gary? Are you enjoying your new toy, Gary? I mean, I know you're quite familiar with the product, but how's the new one bedding in? All good, I hope. We're going to Alaska in a moment. There's a thing I don't say very often. We're going to Alaska with Hitachi right after this. Right after this. Oh, play
Since the
Daniel.
finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Dan has just asked, any news on the Bobcat takeover of Wacker Neuson? I've heard nothing since. To be perfectly honest with you, I reckon this one could go on for a little while. Bearing in mind that they often compete in very similar areas, particularly like compact wheel loaders and that kind of thing. I reckon that is likely to be one that is passed across the desks of whatever the European equivalent of the Monopolies and Mergers Commission is. I'm not entirely sure what that's called, but I think they will be probably taking a look at that. So I'm certainly not expecting that to be resolved in 2025. If it's resolved at all, we shall see. Let's go to Alaska with Hitachi. You think it's cold where you are? Alaska's a whole different story.
My name is Stephen Fiddler. My snow removal company, I just started out, I was much like most Alaskans, we just end up buying our own plow truck after a while if you got multiple properties. Then I needed something a little bit bigger than a plow truck, so we had to go big. I went with the Hitachi loader because it's the biggest bang for the buck. This machine has helped me start my business because it's just kind of like the Swiss Army knife of machines. You can put whatever attachment on there, it gets in where you need to, it lifts everything, the weight is right for tasks that require a little bit heavier of a machine, but then it's not too heavy to trailer around. So it's really just kind of the all-around machine to get started. You can't lose. In the summertime, we rent our machines out, and we normally rent to just kind of the average do-it-yourselfer, the homeowner. Maybe they're looking to do some house projects and things like that. That's who we typically rent out to. When I think of Hitachi, the main thing that I think about is the ease of maintenance on this. When we went to go do our maintenance on there, everything was right there, real easy to get a hold of and access. But then on top of that, I just think that it has everything to get the job done without all the extra fluff that can get broken. And that's really important when you're using it. As far as the machine's performance goes, everybody loves it. It's maneuverable, it gets in where they need to get into. There's just no lack of power when it comes to lifting up the dirt or whatever else they need to along the way. Between the bucket, the snow bucket, and the snow blower, we are absolutely switching all the time. That quick coupler is like the only way to go. It has an excellent heater system, especially with the way that we set up everything for winterization. But on top of that, it has a suspension mode with the bucket that allows that bucket to move when you're going over bumps, and then it has a really nice, comfortable suspension seat in there as well. And so being in that for 10 to 12 hours, it's not as tough as it normally would be. CMI and their team have been absolutely incredible. Even if there was a better product out there, which I just don't think so. Even if there was, though, I'd be buying it from CMI, hands down. The amount of downtime, or really the lack thereof with this crew, is just as low as can be. They moved the world in order to get me back on the road, and it was absolutely incredible. So I see my company growing in the way that we're going to have more of these Hitachi loaders for sure. They're pretty dang good, yeah. But we might go bigger the next time. That way we can step up into larger commercial projects. Then that way we can run a lot larger of attachments as well with snow blowers and bigger plows and things like that.
And yes, Chris, you are absolutely right. Should that not be Devellon takes over Wacker? Yes, I think the press release actually said Devellon Bobcat. I think that's. So my guess is it will be Devellon doing the taking over, but it'll be the Bobcat bit that kind of absorbs it, assuming it goes ahead. Then again, shouldn't it be Hyundai takes over Wacker? Yeah. It's an incestuous old business, isn't it? Mick says, I have to leave Mark getting some photos together from the start of the building here. Hopefully all will be finished by January, February. We'll send some through to you. Have the vet here soon, so we'll catch up all before Christmas. Mick, have a great day. Send us some photographs. Love to see how it's all coming together. Really would be very interested in that. I like all things Italian. We've got one final film, I think, to bring you after her with the books. Yeah, we're doing PC 365 from Komatsu after her.
It's good to read. Head over to the Demolition News bookstore. Maybe I'll see you there.
Dan has just said, I wonder why Wacker are going down the route selling out to another manufacturer. I don't know. I mean, apparently the negotiations are taking place. I don't know whether this is kind of a hostile takeover bid or whether they've invited it. I know there's a kind of a family at the heart of the whole Wacker thing. Maybe the family have got enough money. They've tired of the business. Nobody said. In some ways, I mean, it's kind of like I'm going to go from two friends to one. I've got enormous admiration, respect for everything at Bobcat. Love the people there. Exactly the same at Wacker. So, and Belmer will look a bit different as well, because Bobcat and let me do it the right way around. Bobcat and Wacker generally side by side. Could we, the next Belmer, could it just be one big stand? Will this be the demise of Wacker Neuson, like Samsung and a few others that were taken over? The one thing I would say is, bearing in mind all we've just said about plant works, if Bobcat take over Wacker Neuson, I think they would be very sensible to retain at least some of the brand names. For example, a Wacker plate is a Wacker plate. Would you really want it to be called a Bobcat plate? Probably not. Where is our Blondie? Well, she's verging on the indecent, Dan. So I wouldn't say I've pensioned her off, but she's tucked away. I thought it was better to take her off the screen before somebody complained about her being on the screen. That's the absolute truth of the matter. After all the rationalisation of the Korean manufacturers, will the same happen in China? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Yeah, it makes you wonder. Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I mean, when I've been going back over the history of HiMac, RB, and so on down the line, it is interesting. It's kind of back in the midst of time now, but the number of companies that were there and then weren't, and they were swallowed up and then subsequently swallowed up again, and bits went over there and another bit went over there and so on down the line. It's listen, the Chinese market, you'd have to think at some point will be ripe for some rationalization. I wonder who will come out on top. I wonder. I promise you one final film. It's the Komatsu PC 365, which is a bit of a beast anyway. And here she is.
The PC 365, it's been a great success with zero downtime. And we've piled some hours on them so far.
With the 365, it's a whole lot smoother, quieter, faster. This machine ran yesterday and we used probably a quarter of a tank, on a 10-hour day.
These things have performed flawlessly. They've been absolutely everything Komatsu told us they would be, and we couldn't be happier. And the customers who have ran them, operated them, seen the benefits, it's day and night difference.
When the PC 365 started showing up, it was an argument who gets to run them, as opposed to, not wanting to be the ones that get in it. No complaints. There's certain cities where they can get a little picky about times of operation. And then here we are, it's just barely idling up while digging, and then it's almost silent.
I love the swing. The swing's fast, it's precise, versus having that lag and that overswing. So all in all, it's a great machine. I would buy 4 more right now if the workload was there.
I have one of my foremans that was on another competitor's piece of equipment. He had ran it for the past probably 2 years for us, and we got him the 365 hybrid. Put him on it, and he refuses to go on the other piece of equipment now.
Dan has only been in Plymouth for a few days, but apparently he's already struggling. No, the blonde was more eye candy. Yeah, that was the problem, Dan. That was the problem. Listen, I can't sit here and spout forth about women in construction and then have dolly birds on the screen. It just, the two don't go together, even if it was somebody else's fault. Stick with the digger pond, Dan. Yes, I think you're probably right. I think that's way safer. Either that or cold showers. This show has now been going so long. I don't know if you realise this, but my morning monologue, I write it and then I set it to go live over on our Substack, over on Demolition Insider at 11 o'clock, which means that the written version of this actually went live 5 minutes ago because I've been too busy fanning around here talking about the possible demise of plant works. Such is life. Anyway, it is that time. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. If you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back immediately. I was going to say after this, but Gareth just said the guy in the Volvo EC550 had a go on the cat, said it's better for digging the rock than his. There you are. And Dan saying, great show today. Conversations, 1 hour. No morning monologue yet. I'm about to do it. In fact, I'll do it right after this. Take two demolition companies. We'll call the first one Company A. And you'd think maybe the second company would be called Company B, but it isn't. Instead, we're going to call it Company ? And a proper name is just one of the many things that the second company doesn't have, each of which affords it an unfair advantage over Company A. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's start with Company A. Company A is reputable and well regarded by clients and peers alike. They do things right by their staff and right by those they work for. They pay their employees well and offer a range of employment benefits, including sick pay, holiday pay, maternity and paternity leave, pension contributions, and national insurance payments. They also train all their staff at considerable cost, not just once, but on an ongoing basis. Staff turnover is low, and those that do leave often return having discovered that the grass is not so green elsewhere as they thought. The firm operates from a state-of-the-art head office that's filled to the rafters with the very latest in super-fast computers and equally fast broadband. The head office is so comfortable and so well equipped that staff come in early and leave late out of choice. Company A invests in the very latest equipment and prides itself on replacing most of its machines within 3 years. They buy the best attachments, not out of ego, but because they want the job done properly. They were quick to embrace quick couplers and are constantly seeking ways to make their machines safer, more productive, even though innovation often carries a hefty price tag. They could get their fuel, their oils and their lubricants cheaper elsewhere, but having invested in the best equipment they can afford, they insist on using only the best and the most expensive. They also refuse to buy spurious spare parts, preferring to buy direct from their chosen dealer for ensured quality and to protect their warranty. The company spends an almost ludicrous amount of money on insurance, both public liability and equipment insurance. That insurance is overseen by an internal person who also monitors shifts in regulations and legislation to ensure that the company remains one step ahead. They get precious little in return, but Company A also pays to be a member of a trade body in the increasingly vain hope of strength in numbers should things turn nasty for the wider industry. Metals from their demolition projects are sent to a reputable scrap company so they have a proper paper trail and to provide full transparency and value for their clients. Company A's waste minimisation protocol ensures that everything that can be reclaimed, recycled or reused is suitably segregated. And on the increasingly rare occasions they do have actual waste, it's sent to a fully licensed and reputable landfill for careful disposal. The company supports several charities, sponsors the local school football team, and operates a well-funded and highly successful apprenticeship program to ensure a constant flow of enthusiastic young people into its workforce. In short, Company A does right by its staff, by its clients, the local community, and the environment. It actively seeks out information about changes in regulations to ensure that it is always fully compliant. That's company A. Now let's shift our attention to company ? And let's start with that curious name. The truth is, the company doesn't really have a name. It's not an entity in the truest sense of the word. It prefers to fly under the radar. It has no head office as such for precisely the same reason. Best to keep the authorities, the regulators, and the taxman guessing. The company actually has no staff in the traditional sense. There's a handful of guys they pick up and put down according to workload, but none of them are actually qualified. But company ? Doesn't worry about such formalities. And besides, if they're not qualified, they don't have to concern themselves with training or competence cards or holiday pay or sick pay or maternity leave. Company ? has a strict order when it comes to work. They like to get in early and strip anything that might be sold for cash. Scrap metal, slates, tiles, and that cash will be used to pay the guys working on the project for the first week. And that cash will be used to pay the guys in cash that are working on the project for the first few weeks. The company's not especially focused on sustainability either. If they can sell a risings at a profit, they will, but if they can't, they bypass official landfills, preferring to create their own down a country lane somewhere. Their equipment isn't owned, it's hired in. And while some might arm themselves with quick couplers and an array of attachments, company ? makes do with a grab. After all, any wear and tear on the carrier machine, not really their problem, is it? Fuel, lubricants, oil, cheapest they can find. And if it happens to come from a questionable source or a rival site, yeah, that's just dandy too. Company ? doesn't belong to a trade association, and it doesn't attend industry conferences or events. For one thing, it has no interest in shifts in legislation or market trends. They don't apply to them. Besides, they wouldn't be particularly welcome. They've undercut and stitched up pretty much everyone in the industry. They would not be welcome. But here's the thing. Company A, with all its overheads, staff benefits, and administrative and financial burdens, is expected to compete directly with a company that has none. And the clients, the ones that espouse best practice and transparency, are quite happy to turn a blind eye if they can get the demolition done on the cheap. Bear with me 1 second. I just want to... Sorry, I've missed a little bit. I knew I had. Bear with me for 1 second and I'll pretend that little gap didn't happen. So, welcome to the modern demolition world, where honesty is penalised, where disreputable trumps reputable, and where clients' insistence on the lowest possible price breeds dishonesty. There you are. There's my thought for the day. I don't know why I'm tempted to push the microphone away. Still got things to say. Let's have a look. What we got going on over in the chat. Company A sounds amazing. Are they looking for any operators? This was, I'm not going to name names. This was actually born of a conversation I had with a demolition guy just a few days ago. And he was saying, he was being more specific. He was saying, there's a company fairly local to him. They'll win a job. And it's literally, Friday night in the pub. Lads, anyone fancy a bit of work for the next couple of weeks? Yeah. No question marks about cards or PPE or qualifications or anything like that. Yeah, okay, couple of weeks. And they turn up, strip the place, strip out the lead and the steel and the metals and everything else, sell it for cash, pay the lads in cash, send them off down the pub again, which is all bad. Let's make no bones about it. All of that is bad. But it is facilitated by the people that are paying them. If you had a level playing field and you didn't have clients insisting, I don't care what else happens, I want the lowest possible price, that would not be allowed to happen. And yet you have clients talking about, our commitment to quality, our commitment to sustainability, our commitment to the environment, our commitment to transparency. But when push comes to shove, They're quite willing to push all of that to one side and take the lowest bid, even if that lowest bid is utterly disreputable, verging and sometimes going beyond the criminal, dangerous, non-compliant, causing harm, environmental harm or beyond, and that's fine. Jim says, it's business. There's never a level playing field. I hate to say it, but he's absolutely right, which makes you wonder. And this is not the way I want this conversation to end. But if you are a newcomer to the demolition industry and you can make money by foregoing rules, regulation, tax, sustainability, employee benefits, why would you choose to go the reputable route? Now, I know some people are just born that way. They do take their reputation very seriously, and I don't think their conscience would allow them to do things in a disreputable, dishonorable, illegal way. But if you're a newbie in the industry and you're weighing it up, I can spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to follow every rule and regulation to be totally, totally, totally reputable, beyond reproach. Or I can spend absolutely nothing and make the same money. And let's be clear, while that is a criticism of company ? They are at fault for basically taking the bait. But the reason that happens is because we have clients out there that will say one thing, but then they'll happily turn a blind eye and seize upon somebody cheaper. And when you listen to the arguments, we've just invested in a brand new Liebherr excavator. It's the absolute, it's the Rolls Royce of the industry. It's got all mod cons. We're monitoring it remotely, and it does all of the things. And after 3 years, we'll get rid of it because even though it's a Liebherr, it might lead to a bit of downtime. And you've got somebody over here who's hiring in a machine that's already past its sell-by date. Not really bothered whether it breaks down or not. If that means that they end up overrunning on the project, not their problem. So how do you compete? And frankly, why would you? Why would you? And I wonder if the outcome of all of that is going to be a push towards specialization. If the general demolition, taking down a few houses or an old factory, or that's a bit extreme, an old warehouse or an old toilet block or something like that. If the people that are letting those contracts are so willing to turn a blind eye on dishonorable, disreputable behavior, does that mean that those companies that choose to be reputable and playing with a straight bat, do they have to find themselves a niche where, I don't know, the nuclear industry or something like that, where you are actually rewarded for being kosher? Is that where we're headed? I don't know the answer to that one. I have to say, I don't know the answer to that one. But yeah, it is business, as Jim rightly said. There's never a level playing field. I accept that. But what bugs me is the double standard, the duplicity of the industry. And it's like, the companies that, we're doing our bit for mental health, but we're not going to change our working practices because that would be too much. We're all about women in construction. We only employ one, but we trot her out at least once a year so we can say, look how forward thinking we are. And, we are all about, transparency and reputable, our Our reputation is our very lifeblood. But you can do it cheaper. Yeah, go on then, crack on. It's the double standard that bugs me. Anywho, people, having spoken for the best part of an hour about plant works, we're now at an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go on with your day job. I'll be back here tomorrow for yet more of the same. Hopefully, we'll be able to keep the timing a little more under control, but who the hell knows? Depends what comes up in the news, I guess. Until then, everybody, have a fantastic day. Lou, best of luck with whatever journey this all takes you on. 19 Group, good luck with what you purchased. I mean, listen, I firmly believe that the industry does deserve an exhibition. I'm just not convinced that something at the NEC is that exhibition. But I wish you success anyway. Everybody else, go and have a fantastic day. I'll see you all again on the morrow. Till then, have a good one. I'll see you soon.